Kishali this power to control me. I know that she doesn't wear a watch, and she had no sense of time, so it was kind of a false promise, and I feel like I tricked her a little bit.
You did.
I'm not that sad about it. So this is, as Kishali mentioned, this is our methodology for assessing implementation of RTI. If we can go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so I don't know where Kishali got that phrase about it being complex, but somehow it popped up on the
opening on that. Oh my God!
Somehow it popped up on my slides here. You know, so the basic idea behind this methodology, you know, as Kishali introduced very nicely, this is a complex thing. Of course, you know, you all know that because most of you are, you know, oversight bodies for information, or if you're not, you're NGO people that are working closely in this area. You know, because it's complex, it's not immediately obvious whether the thing is working or not. Of course, some problems are very obvious. You know, sometimes delays are rife throughout the system, and you can see that. And sometimes things that are going well are obvious too, but it's also easy to exaggerate or overemphasize or focus on some things and not on other things, and not look at, you know, everything. And the goal of this methodology, when we say assess, we're assessing the delivery of information, not the upstream benefits. So, I mean, the RTI is there to give information to people, but mostly with another, you know, social purpose in mind: holding governments accountable, facilitating participation, reducing corruption, whatever it may be. We are not assessing those things. We're just looking at whether this law is being applied properly. You know, we felt that because it's complex, we need a relatively sophisticated methodology to see what's really going on in all of these parts of the system. You know, this methodology aims to meet that need. And we also feel, of course, many of you may have some sort of assessment tools that you're already using. I mean, hopefully you do have something, but this one is sort of standardized. So if different countries apply it, we can sort of see, you know, and compare across them. And it also, as we'll see, you know, generates results for different public authorities, so we can see, and in different assessment areas, so you can see which parts of the system are working better or worse. Next slide, please. So globally, we have, I put 138 plus there, you know, because I want these slides to last for at least a couple of weeks, but I think it is actually 138. That's our assessment. You get different numbers from different people because some people only count UN member states. You know, we don't exclude Kosovo because the UN Security Council won't admit them as a member. If Palestine passes a law, we will include them too, even though, you know, somebody may exclude them from being recognized as UN states. So we look at whether the thing is a state or not the UN member. And of course, you know, the RTI systems vary a lot in, you know, what they cover, which bodies they cover, what obligations they put out, and the assessment here is adaptable to your law. So, you know, we obviously we push for strong laws, but this is not about that. This is about whether whatever your law says is being applied properly. It is not a rating. So we don't, you know, unlike our other tool, which I will come back to in a second now, we don't put countries on, you know, top to bottom kind of thing. But we do have a color grading system, red, yellow, green. So, you know, to give a rough sense of, you know, you're doing really well, you're doing okay, you're struggling, you know, and to give a little bit of that and to compare across different organizations. The goal is not to criticize or to penalize, but the goal is to assess and then to address the problems. So it's not something that you should apply and then put on the shelf or file somewhere. It's something that you should apply, and then having found out what's not working, you should do it. And I mean, I think that in every endeavor, every area of human endeavor, assessment is an important part of that. You probably all do personnel assessments within your office. Hopefully you also have your staff assess you and whatever. We need to assess things to know what we're doing. And I think it's also an important public relations element to it, show the public that the oversight bodies are serious and that, well, I put doing well there. Of course, that's a pre-conclusion. Maybe you're not doing well, and the result will show that. But anyway, if you're doing well, it'll show that. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Yeah. And I mean, also, we adopted the RTI rating back in 2011, and it was only really with the adoption of the SDGs, and in particular SDG 16.10.2, which everybody knows is about the adoption and implementation of RTI laws. We always knew that the RTI rating, which looks at the legal framework, was only part of the puzzle, and that in a sense, the bigger part of the puzzle about implementation was still there to be done. It's much more complicated. We kind of needed something to kick us into gear, to buckle down and develop something. And 16.10.2 was the motivation for that. UNESCO, who is represented here, and obviously an important player in this conference, is the custodian agency for this. The SDGs run from 2015 to 2030. The driving concept behind the SDGs is that there should be substantial progress made. So unlike the MDGs, which preceded them, which had hard targets, numbers that you were supposed to reach. The SDGs are not like that. But anyway, we do, if we're going to be able to say anything sensible about 16.10.2, of course, we know which countries have adopted laws because of the RTI rating. We know how strong those laws are, but we don't know how well implementation is. And so we need something on that side. Okay, next slide, please. So everybody knows about the RTI rating, I presume, and the RTI, it only assesses the quality of the legal framework. It doesn't look at how the law is being implemented at all, and we find ourselves in a rather embarrassing situation now, and I can tell you I get an email every couple of weeks about this. What is Afghanistan doing at the top of the bloody RTI rating? And it is a peculiar situation that, perhaps the most dysfunctional country in the world at the moment, which is doing 0 on RTI, is at the top of our RTI rating, but the Taliban have not amended the legislation. So the legislation remains in force. So there it is. We're a little bit more solid in second place with Mexico. I feel more comfortable about that one, although we have to see what happens in Mexico. We just mentioned briefly 2 other initiatives in this area, one of which I presume all of you or most of you will know about, the UNESCO surveys. Probably many of your offices have completed those surveys, and if not, you should be doing that. We worked with UNESCO on them. That's very, very important. That, of course, is something annually. But as you know, it's a fairly brief questionnaire. There are 8 questions with 2 sub-questions. It's a purely self-assessment approach. Which, there's no review of that self-assessment. So very important to continue with that, but only part of the puzzle. Then FOIAnet, the Freedom of Information Advocates Network, and I'm currently the chair of FOIAnet. I need to do something about that and get myself elected off of the position of chair, or I will seem like some of these endless dictators who never want to leave the position. I'm very happy to leave. I just haven't quite got around to organizing an election. Anyway, FOIAnet is the civil society network. And there's another tool in FOIAnet that's designed for civil society assessments. It's more similar to this methodology than the UNESCO one, but much simpler. Again, something which we hope civil society organizations would apply annually, and designed to be kind of, simple and not too onerous to apply because many civil society organizations don't have a lot of resources. Okay, next slide, please. So that's just a kind of, I don't know if people can see that. I mean, I guess I can see it, so you should be able to. So if we look at who applies it, so the FOIAnet is civil society, UNESCO is public bodies, information commissions, ideally, and under the comprehensive methodology, we envisage a range of actors being involved, civil society and public bodies, but we hope that it will be led by information commissions or commissioners, but we have had cases where it was applied simply by civil society organization as well. So FOIAnet looks at proactive, reactive, and institutional measures. The UNESCO one really focuses on central measures. So it's, goes to the oversight bodies about what they're doing, although it probes a little further than that. And the comprehensive methodology, as we slightly expensively call it, looks at the central function, so the oversight body, but also the institutional measures that are put in place by individual public authorities, and then the proactive and reactive performance of those individual public authorities. So the central, and then the other three are for individual public authorities. And how? So basically the FOIAnet is desk research and requests, so test requests. The UNESCO, as you know, is the surveys. And here we have 7 different assessment tools. So quite a lot more complicated on the data and data gathering side of things. Next slide, please. So I won't go into a long song and dance about how we developed the methodology. We did a comprehensive survey of other methodologies, of international standards and better practice on the implementation side. We had extensive, we basically developed it in Pakistan, so we had very extensive consultations in Pakistan with all of the different stakeholders. We did that in part because Pakistan was going through a process of substantially renewing its own commitment to RTI, and and was in the process of adopting much stronger laws at the provincial level and then at the federal level in Pakistan. But we also consulted quite extensively internationally. We did a pilot in Pakistan as well. KP province, don't ask me to pronounce that, and then we revised it substantially following the pilot. And then we have developed through the pilot a lot of support tools. I won't go into the details about that, but I mean, hopefully it's a lot easier to apply now than it was during the pilot. Next slide. So as I already mentioned, we have the 4 assessment areas, central measures, which is not only about the oversight body, but heavily concentrated on the oversight body, the Information Commission, and then for the public authority, 3 areas: institutional measures, proactive disclosure, reactive disclosure. Each of those is broken down into 3 sub areas, the substantive issues that you're supposed to look at. And we have tried to be pretty comprehensive in terms of those substantive issues. So you will see, if you look at the full methodology, you'll see, 2 pages or 2.5 pages, a bullet list of things to look at for each of the 4 areas. So for central measures, are the members appointed? Are the members independent? Is funding allocated? Does it do this? Does it do that? How are the decisions? And so on and so forth. If anybody reads it and thinks we're missing something, please feed that back to me, because we're always happy to improve it. But as I say, we had then there's the assessment tools. So for each assessment area, there are a set of assessment tools. Some of them apply to everything. So there's a literature review, for example, that applies to everything. You're going to do a literature review for every area. There are self-assessments, complex self-assessments. They also apply to everything. And some don't apply to everything. And then we have a grading system, and the grading system looks at how to assign. We do work with numbers because, I mean, you can't sort of mix and match colors. So we give numbers, and then you end up with a grade, a score, and then we convert it to a color grade. The thing is, as I mentioned, it's not designed to be a rating system, and also it's not precise and comparable enough to sustain comparative close comparative assessment. So we just have the color grade system. The next slide. So out of the 4 assessment areas, 2 of them, central measures and institutional measures, are looking at the systemic things that are in place. How is the what are the systems that are in place to implement? And 2 of them are the end delivery, proactive disclosure and reactive disclosure, linked to the 2 forms of disclosure. And the idea is that, although in the end of the day, or at the end of the day, disclosure of information is what these things are all about, but you do need systems to make sure that happens. And it's important to supplement a review of what's actually getting disclosed with a look at how the systems are working. And if you want to improve things, often it will be at the systemic level that you need to implement those measures. So we need to know what's going on systemically. For example, if the oversight body isn't given enough money, we're going to see problems downstream in terms of the disclosure of information, but the solution is to increase the funding. So we need to identify that. Okay, next slide, please. So this is, we had an intern design this. CLD is very strong on substance, but not very strong on presentation and the pitching of things. And I just think that this is a lovely, it's a little far off to see it, but this is the pinnacle of our expressive capacity in pictures. And it goes through the methodology. I mean, that's not, it's too small for me to see. And it's, I'm just putting it there more as a picture of what's going on. So, but if you go on the website, you'll see there's a nice squiggly line between all of these lovely pictures, and it will walk you through the roadmap for how to do the methodology. And the first is assessing whether you want to apply it, and then putting in place the structures. And it's a logical roadmap, I think. Okay, next slide. So then finally, CLD is rolling out. I mean, we've rolled it out already, but we're continuing to roll it out. We have a project funded by the Canadian government, thanks to the government of Canada for that, to roll this out. And the process, roughly speaking, is to have initial discussions with different actors, focusing on information commissions, ideally, about whether they're interested and explaining how it works. So this is sort of one of those. Then if a jurisdiction is interested in applying it, we provide training support. It's quite a complex methodology. I provide a very rough overview here, but getting into the details. So we can do a training in person, or we can do it remotely by video links, and we also have an online training course, which isn't yet, I mean, I say we have it developed, we haven't quite lodged it online. And we're going to hear from Lucy. Just a couple of weeks ago, myself and one of my staff were in Nairobi, and we provided a training to Lucy and her staff, and civil society groups as well. And she might talk about that a little bit. Then we also are there to provide support during the application of the methodology. It is complicated, and what we've seen is even after training, sometimes groups vary a little bit or need support. The grading is my first degree was in mathematics before I studied law, so I find the grading pretty simple, but not everybody finds math so easy. So if there's problems with that, and then the report writing, we have one of the tools we have, and we have spreadsheets which have automatically formulas in them, although they may need to be adjusted based on different factors. And we have an outline for the report and what it should contain. But again, we can provide support to all of that. And then, as I said, I mean, the assessment is, in a sense, only the first step. You assess, and then having identified what's not working and what is working, I mean, and you celebrate what's working, but you address what's not working. And we have some facility to provide support to address those weaknesses. So, final message in bigger font: if you're interested, get in touch with us. I see I don't have an email there, but anyway, for some reason, it's just websites. So the first website is the general CLD website. The second one is the RTI evaluation website, which is the one which hosts this methodology. Everything is there. So the master methodology, and then the broken down by different parts of it and whatever, all of the assessment tools, all of the other support tools and things like that. I do also have, and again, I'm probably inordinately proud of these brochures which have links to the QR codes for the website and all that kind of stuff, and email addresses as well. So I'll stop with that, and we'll have a chance to discuss that.
Thank you, Toby. You're 5 minutes over time, by the way, but okay. May I invite Lucy to address? You got 10 minutes each.
Good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Lucy Dogo, and I come from Kenya. We did carry out a training on this methodology in Kenya on 18th June 2023, just the other day, and it was an experience. Okay, I should clarify why it was an experience. It's because we were a mixture of students, I would call them students, from our office, that is the commission office, those people who implement ATI, civil society who perceive ATI in another way, and obviously there is normally a crash thereabout, but they were all very interesting. Before I come to that, I wanted to give a bit of a background that we did pass our constitution in 2010, and the right of access to information, or the right to information, was embedded in our constitution. But it was only 6 years later when ATI Act was passed, and it was not passed by government. It was not a government initiative, although government was trying to pass this law, but they delayed, and the civil society took it upon themselves, and they influenced parliamentarians, and one of our lady MP passed, was instrumental in having it passed as a private members bill. Because of that, obviously we had certain issues. One of them being that it was not a money bill, meaning that it was not funded. It has never been funded as a standalone law. Secondly, being a private members bill, it was not a priority to the government. Number two, it was also placed under the Ombudsman office, and we had to use the officers within the Ombudsman office. And because of that, we are thin on the ground. And we were appointed in 2018. And during that time, 2018, ATI had just passed 1 year ago. And they had the commission, being so thin on the ground, had not put in structures on implementation of ATI. And the current then strategic plan being implemented had no mention of ATI. So when we took over, we had no choice but to come up with a 2018, we were not able to pass the strategic plan, but 2019-2023, our strategic plan was put in place, and we did place ATI now within the structure of the commission. And in 2019, we were also trained on the UNESCO tool in South Africa, and we started implementing it. At the same time, the commission was evaluated by a private institution, and our baseline survey on the absorption of ATI was very low, 23 thereabout %. It was done on the citizens, not on the commission itself, although the commission gave their views, and we felt that we were very low. We needed to up our games. Therefore, it is the first time we are being evaluated as a commission, not from the citizens' side of view, but the first two measures will truly help us know where we are. As a commission, we first met Laura Notes from Law and Democracy, Center for Law and Democracy, who truly inducted us on one-to-one discussion. And the way she explained how this methodology would help us, we embraced it. We were 3 of us from the commission, and as a group, it was agreed that this might help us complement our monitoring and evaluation of the strategic plan, which is coming to an end. So we want to use this tool to help us measure ourselves. What have we done 4 to 5 years of implementing ATI? Following this discussion, the commission did agree to partner, and we had a virtual meeting with now CLD, and Toby was there. And we agreed that we undertake a training of the members of the commission, the civil society, and our CEO, our chair, and all the other commissioners were in agreement, and they were able to release the staff for training. The commission also learned that this tool will also help us in 2 things. Number one, it will strengthen our national law in that we'll know where we are, we'll measure ourselves, come up with gaps to address, to be addressed, not just by the commission, but also by the government, and the civil society may give their inputs. We were also to know what are the systemic areas insofar as implementation of ATA is concerned, which we need to address. What did we take home from the training? 17 officers were trained from the commission and 4 from civil society. And this institution from civil society we chose are those who are very hard on us. They are always making requests. One of them is called Katiba Institute, which some of you may know, which kind of measures the implementation of the constitution in Kenya. The other one is Article 19. It gives us funding because we truly partner with them in many areas. And the other one is the international it's something jurist or commission jurist. It's getting out of hand, Kenyan chapter. Because of that, they didn't know about policies, and they understood us. And we thought that if they joined us, they will be able to give a better insight on how we need to improve. Further, we chose directors and technical people who are used to even filling the UNESCO tool. So they understood what we normally do as a commission. After the training, which I don't think I want to go through it, we were trained to understand key assessment areas, that is central, what was put on the board. I don't want to go through it. Our officers were issued with certificates. And yesterday we were told that if you give certificates to officers, they own the process. And that was a take home from my other, I think he gave that presentation. And when they presented these certificates to the commission, or to now our human resource officers, they were envied by everybody. And there was a question, why commissioner chose this one and not that one? Simply because now when they talked to the other staff, they said, I now understand ATI. I understand why they have to do all these things, why you have to fill the UNESCO form, why the methodology form, why we were also doing other tools from the other working groups. We had other 5 working groups. And I used to tell them, please fill this form, answer these questions. But now they understood it in another way. What is the next step that we want to take? I hope my time is not up. What we want to do first and foremost is to look for financial needs, because we need them. We also need technical staff. And I'm happy to say that Center for Law and Development will help us in some of that, but we also call upon other supporters, Article 19, UNESCO, and even ICJ, which deals with the policy, to step in and help us carry out this the tool and implement this tool or carry out this assessment. The commission is also supposed to develop a work plan or stroke schedule for the next 1 year. And we want to incorporate this activity as one of our activities, and it will be measured at the end of June 2024 on whether we have achieved this. So we have incorporated this activity in our work plan. We also want to launch this comprehensive methodology assessment, hopefully on Universal Day of Access to Information 2024. And we hope that we will be able to implement it in style and bring all the civil society who have been involved in this methodology. And the commission that will also hope to assist our Kenya Kwanza government, because in next year the president wants to give the State of the Nation address on openness, and it is already in their manifesto. And we hope that this methodology will help us be able to give an input to that report. And finally, we also want to really help MDAs or our agencies to improve on their performance and address access to information at the county level. Finally, the Commission appreciates the support given by CLD so far and looks forward to the next phase of collaboration, not just with CLD, but all the other institutions present. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for keeping exactly to time, unlike Toby. So could I invite Chris to address next? You have 10 minutes, Chris?
I won't take 10 minutes, I promise.
Okay.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. So I've been invited by Toby to discuss our experience with this RTI assessment tool of CLD. To be quite honest, Toby, is it okay if I'll be honest? We in the Philippines, we felt really bad because we had a really low RTI rating because we don't have legislation. And I said, I would take any test just to make sure that I have a higher rating. And so when Toby presented, oh, Chris, I have this RTI, I said, I'll be your first customer. So back in 2020, just before the pandemic hit, Toby came over here in the Philippines to conduct a workshop for us. It had intended to be a in-person and face-to-face assessment. However, the pandemic happened. We thought it would last only for a few months. It happened for 2 years. But I was really, I really wanted to crawl out of the low RTI rating hole that we were in. And so, because that was the challenge, I had a very fruitful discussion with Toby. Toby, you can't just judge FOI rating based on the laws that we have. We don't have that. We have, Chris, I'm sorry, because the RTI rating is really based on the legislation. Okay, what do you have? So we have the RTI, because we were very proud of our implementation. So prior to that, we do conduct some form of assessment for our government agencies. But who will assess the central body? We can't assess ourselves. We can do some kind of self-assessment tool, but honestly, how honest would that assessment be? And so when CLD came up with this RTI assessment tool, we said we want to be assessed because we want to be proven that while we don't have legislation, we do implement our constitutional obligation to provide information to the public. And so unlike Lucy's case in Kenya, and they were able to do this in person just a few weeks ago, we went through the whole assessment during the pandemic. At least we had the workshop in person with Toby in February of 2020. We had to delay the implementation of this assessment from 2020 to 2021 when all of us were already attuned to Zoom and other video conferencing platforms. And so, yeah, we underwent the same assessment that Lucy's team underwent, only all online. This was all done through Zoom and through emails. We'd follow the CLD gave us all of the instructions which we implemented. You told us to send letters with the links to the questionnaires to our partner CSOs. Our CSO partner here was Right to Know Right Now Coalition. Some of you met them earlier today and yesterday. And we also provided a link communication to our national government agencies. And so we had quite a few. we here in the Philippines, we have around 200 national government agencies, ranging from our trade and industry, customs, overseas workers, social welfare, and all of these answered all of the assessment questionnaires of our by their respective FOI decision maker and FOI receiving officer, plus their IT officers. Part of the assessment would also be a visual inspection, since they couldn't do that. So that was, you would have FOI officers with their phones, mobile phones connected to Zoom, going around. Oh, this is where we keep our documents. This is how we receive an FOI request. And then we submitted everything to CLD, and then they gave us already our assessment, and we shared it with all of our colleagues who underwent the assessment. And it's a very good tool. It identifies your weak points and also gives suggestions on how we can strengthen them. Questions in the questionnaire range from central authority measures down to institutional measures of the agency. What are their proactive disclosure mechanisms and what are the reactive disclosure mechanisms? It's really very comprehensive, as already discussed by Toby and Lucy. Looking back, if we could do it all over again, we would have done it in person, because I think it's different if it's in person. We had challenges with our FOI officers in the ground in answering the questionnaires. Sometimes they don't. The good thing, I think, with in person, Lucy, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you don't understand the question, at least you're able to have someone explain it. Our predicament was our officers had to answer them based on their understanding of how the questions went. And if you go down to the grassroots, sometimes the questions are in English. It is difficult to understand. So I would suggest to do it in person. It's too early for the Philippines to undergo the assessment again. It's just been 2 years, so probably we'll submit ourselves in the not too distant future. But overall, we're very happy with the assessment. I think we scored relatively high in RTI implementation. So that's something to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we'll open the floor for discussion now. I'd like to use my moderator's privilege. I just went through this just about 10 minutes before we had the discussions here. At one level, Toby, I'm impressed by the thoroughness of the questions that you have formulated here. Though you have formulated this as a tool for RTI regimes that are already established, as it were, it could also be useful as a learning tool for countries where the FOI regimes have yet not come into place. For example, some of the questions that you've raised here, I wish that we had known or addressed our minds to before the Sri Lanka law was formulated. Because one of the weakest points that we have in the Sri Lankan law is a financial issue, right? And though you have raised the issue about whether the body has been provided funding that is reasonably sufficient, but you flesh it out later by asking a very detailed question, how the budget is allocated and whether it's a separate line item in the overall budget or just included as part of a broader budget for a ministry. Now, on that question, Lucy, has hinged the entire sustainability of the RTI regime in Sri Lanka, because our money comes through the line ministry. We functioned independently for the first 1 year before the president realized that this was going a little bit too much out of control. And the way he tried at least to control the commission was to bring it under line ministry and to control. See, our card is 29 for a population of 23 million, and we have just 9 individuals now at the staff of the commission. So these are the nitty-gritty of details on which really the success or failure of an information regime can literally depend on. So for me, these are important in that sense, really also for other countries who are contemplating RTI regimes to come into place at one level. The second point I would like to very quickly emphasize is the cultural context. I don't know how much of a red light area this is to talk about, but there are certain questions that perhaps may be answered differently in the cultural context. In South Asia, as opposed to, for example, the Western countries. For example, if you go into a South Asian public authority, a Sri Lankan public authority, I would think even South Asia, Anjali, and you ask an information officer whether he or she has been influenced by political pressure, you're never going to find a direct answer to that, right? They're all going to nod their head and say, no, 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 no. But that's really not the case. Whereas you'll find a different answer perhaps in other countries. So I'm not sure how much, it is, I'm not sure how sensitive this is, but this is perhaps a matter that could be looked at really as we go on, applying it in countries. Thank you. So can we start with questions and can, yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. I last year attended the next conference, and after that,
Yeah. Can you use the mic now?
thank you so much. Maybe my name is Nsumbedzeni Nemasisi. I'm from South Africa, Information Regulator, South Africa. Last year, I attended the ICIC in Mexico, and I met Toby. And we were still establishing as the information regulator. And this kind of tool, it gave me this kind of tools that I used to implement in South Africa. What we did after the conference, we then started to do the assessment in the country. And we did assessment for the municipalities, the regulatory bodies in the country, all of them. We did the insurance companies, all of them. We're assessing them whether they comply. And we're using this methodology that you had. And the level of compliance was, none of them was zero in terms of assessment. This year, we're doing the political party assessment. Those who are represented in parliament. And we've done 95% of political parties that are represented in parliament. And the compliance rate is zero as well in terms of compliance. So the tool does help in terms of ensuring that there is adherence to the right of access to information. But my question is, you have given us 4 assessment areas, and you said the central measures, institutional measures. I'm aware of proactive and reactive disclosure, but I was confused about the central measures and the institutional measure. If you can just at least explain what is the difference between the two, because you talk about the systemic process must be in place for effective delivery. And if you maybe can expand on that, the difference between the central measures as well as the institutional measures. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for those comments. And I mean, you really, now I know why I asked her to moderate, because I knew she'd have some great ideas. No, the idea of retrofitting this into building RTI legislation in the first place is actually probably a good idea, because it is very, very detailed. And I mean, we're very well aware that there are different cultural environments in different places. And I mean, the self-assessments are always going to have their strengths and weaknesses, to be diplomatic about it. Not characteristic for me, but I'm going to try. And sometimes you'll get very frank self-assessments, and sometimes you won't. But that's why we have the 7 different assessment tools. So the information officers may say, yes, we're perfectly independent, but when you do a key informant interview with a requester, they may say, oh, these information officers are rubbish. So I mean, and then you got to sort of triangulate your results and have an independent assessment from that. I do think that it's quite important to have self-assessments. Firstly, because I mean, the people working inside the system know things about it, know things about their own situation that, the people outside that are just requesting, people like me who essentially stand outside of the system and just request, that we don't know and things, and you might get some interesting things coming out of the self-assessments. And also, I think it's just fair to give those involved in the system a chance to have their say. But of course, you have to look at all of the results. In terms of your question, and by the way, I didn't realize until we chatted this morning that they had kind of used our tool to develop their own evaluation or assessment tool, which is a great thing to hear. Of course, we like to have it applied per se and with our support and all that kind of stuff. But people take it and run with it and do innovate and change it and whatever. That's great too. It's always we want to contribute to the whole project. So the central measures focus on the central, essentially oversight system. So you in South Africa, the regulator, not just you, but other central actors, the Ministry of Justice or whatever the nodal agency is, what's happening centrally. The institutional measures are an assessment. So you're going to, when you apply the methodology, ultimately, of course, the information commissions or commissioners have their responsibilities under law, so we're going to assess them. But then other than that, it's individual public authorities that are the primary obligation holders. You have a lot of them in any country. Chris mentioned 200 in the Philippines. I would say that's a relatively modest number compared to some countries where there are 1,000 or whatever. The other day I was talking to somebody that they have 800. Least 10 to be assessed, but that's quite a small number. If that's all you can manage, then it's better to do that than not to do it. But we would prefer to see a larger number than that, but it's up to the body that's implementing it. And then you're going to look at for each of those, let's say 20 for the sake of argument, for each of those individual public authorities, the Ministry of Education, the Election Commission, the state-owned oil company or whatever, you're going to look at what institutional measures they have put in place. So under central measures, we're going to look at were you appointed? Are you independent? Are your decisions effective? Are you giving decisions on a timely manner? Are you complying with the law? Are you doing public education? Are you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What are you all doing? For individual public authorities, we're going to look at what they're doing. Are they managing their records properly? Have they appointed information officers? Have they given them formal terms of reference? Have they trained them? Are they managing their records? Are they blah, 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 blah? So there's a whole list of things. So they're sort of similar in a way, but one is looking at the central systems and one is looking at each individual public authority. And you're going to apply that second the institutional measures one to each public authority. So 10, 15, 20, whatever times. So it's, so they look a little similar, but they're actually quite different.
Yep. We took about 2 questions. Speak, Angela.
So I haven't looked at the questions in detail yet, Toby, but I was thinking that, since we are a mix of, different stakeholders in this room, and you're also, in a sense, encouraging that if there are places where the commissions don't come up themselves or the government is not interested, then it could be civil society. Just sharing our experience, because in India, we have done some of these very comprehensive and therefore very time-consuming assessments of implementation. What we found was that for it to have any credibility, if a civil society group is doing it, at all points in time, we have to show that it's objective information. So what we had to then do was to actually depend on filing RTI requests to access all the information in the first place, because otherwise anything that as a civil society group I said was my word against somebody else's. So one thing, and it might already be there, so in which case, you can ignore this, but I thought that it was something that we learned from our experience, and we had to actually develop a standardized set of RTI requests, ATI requests, which were then sent to the commission, which were sent to various public authorities, where we could then share all the information that we got also along with putting out the findings of the report to say that, look, this is where we feel, this is the color coding where you fit, because this is the parameters that we have used and this is the information you have provided. So, and of course the metadata, just putting it out in the public domain. So I just thought that that might have to be a slight distinction, because as opposed to a self-declaration, which is what, you know, UNESCO might be doing, or in your case, if let's say a commission picks this up and does it, if a civil society group does it, I think there will be a slight difference, and you want it to be used, you want it to be have credibility and to be taken seriously by the stakeholders in the country. So that was my
Thank you. Sorry, I'll just keep it brief. Thank you so much, Toby, for this presentation. And it's very interesting and useful to know about the implementation assessment and the methodology that is being used. My name is Ajay Das, and I am from Nepal. And I'm here as an observer, and I represent the Asia Foundation. And we have a program called Civil Society in Media, which also, you know, a component of it, this program is also related to access to information. So when it comes to, you know, the access to information, access for the marginalized and underrepresented communities has been an issue, you know, issue of concern in many countries, including Nepal. So I was wondering, I don't know whether this is kind of, this covers, you know, your area of assessment or not. So does it also, you know, cover the area of assessment where, you know, you see the, into the data, you know, which is related to the access for the women, youth, and marginalized communities, people with disability, and all. Not just, you know, when you start assessment, also when you provide, you know, or CLD provide insights into the implementation gaps and the areas of improvement. Thank you.
Yeah. So just in terms of, we'd have another round. I mean, what we, and I mean, Chris mentioned that when they applied it, they had a partnership with the Right to Information Right Now coalition. So, I mean, we like to, you know, that's perfect. We like to see, and in Kenya, we had the training and we brought the two groups, the two sectors or whatever together. I mean, I think that a combined approach, and I mean, as Chris mentioned, obviously the commission may lead the process, but it can't assess itself. You know, that mean, even if it's so wise and honest and objective to do that, that wouldn't be credible anyway. So, you know, somebody's that somehow there has to be a, you know, an arm's length bit of it going on there, however you manage it. And we, you know, we don't prescribe about those arrangements because they're going to be very different in each country. We do have, so we have, I mean, we sort of talked about self-assessments. There's a self-assessment part of it. There's key informant interviews. There's literature review. There's direct review of proactive disclosure. There's direct review of the decisions of the information of the oversight body. And there is a request testing process. So we lodge requests. Obviously, you've got to do the requests before you do the self-assessment, because the public authority shouldn't know that it's being assessed when it receives the requests. I mean, you're going to do them blind, but you know, if they know they're being assessed, they might pull up their socks for a few months or whatever, and some other methodology. So we have a lot of different data collection methodologies and things. We don't prescribe standardized requests. I mean, you know, it's not, I mean, I've said it before, but it's not essentially designed to rate and grade and whatever. We are going to, I mean, the way the scoring works is you get you know, an overall color grade for the jurisdiction. So India gets a yellow. Then you're going to get a overall color grade for each assessment area. So India gets green for oversight, for central measures, green for institutional, yellow, and so on. And then you get an overall grade for each public authority. So there are going to be, you know, your 20 public authorities, they're all going to get their color, and, you know, which will be different. And so it is a little bit comparative in that sense. And then you can drill down and get different color grades for each of the 3 assessment areas that relate to each public authority for each public authority. So the Ministry of Education does well on institutional measures, poorly on proactive disclosure or whatever it is. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of grades that come out of it. So that we don't want to stress too much, put too much stress on the comparative element, because that's not really the purpose. The purpose is to see what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, not how, if you're better than the next guy. That's not, so we that's not the emphasis. But if you want to, but it's up to you. If you feel it's standardized requests, so you put the same request to each public authority, then you'll have to think of things that are relevant to each public authority, because you can't ask the same things. Education does something different, not standardized in that way. No.
I wasn't talking about the RTI because I wasn't talking about a standardized RTI request. I was saying to be able to assess when an RTI application is filed, to access information on the basis of which the assessment.
We have a very standardized protocol for assessing the requests. In answer to your question, we have tried quite hard to integrate certainly quite a few gender elements in it, also disabled elements, and disabled persons with disability, assessing whether the system's geared up for them, and and other groups as appropriate. For example, is public outreach reaching all sectors of society appropriately? I mean, that's an important area. The public awareness raising, is it just reaching the people in the, men in the capital, or is it reaching, everyone? But it's tethered to the legal obligations. It's about implementation of the law. So we're a bit limited in how far we go with that, but we've tried quite hard to do as much as we can on that. If you have other ideas about that, we're very happy to integrate.
So we have time for just one more round of questions. Would you be able to?
Maybe I should delay my question. I will discuss with Mr. Tobiel.
No, of course. No, just it's fine.
Okay,
Please,
thank you.
yes.
Okay, my name is Plamenka Bojčeva from North Macedonia. I would like to say that we don't have the agency that I'm the director. We don't have obligation to monitor the websites of the institutions, but we do so. As an example, we developed a methodology which is conducted of 2 steps. First step is self-assessment of the institutions, and then we are checking what they said in those questionnaires. So last month we did this monitoring of the local municipalities. First we did it in 2021, and now the government is new in local municipalities, so we did it again, and we have difference, and we did a comparison how it was, where this local municipality was 2 years ago and where is now, and we grade them with green, yellow, and red.
Okay.
So this is what we do. Thank you.
Whoever brought a green, yellow, red before us.
Yes.
Okay, we've got time for just one more question. I've been told that we need to wrap up very, very quickly. So yes, Julia.
Amrita,
Okay,
just one very short comment. I know it from my own experience that carrying out an objective and independent scientific research is extremely expensive.
Yes.
Because we were able to carry out such a research, and almost 3 million euros, very enough for one target group comprehensively to attack with the test requests and to supervise all the web pages. But for the other 2 target groups, this money was enough only for just to take some representative examples. So,
a warning.
but the results on one side, so only these results can be accepted as a comprehensive and objective results.
Right. Thank you. Elizabeth?
I'm not sure if that's going to reach.
That's all right. I can
Just, yeah.
So Toby, it sounds to me as though you have assiduously avoided a ranking system to avoid disquiet from people like me who've been assessed. And didn't score as well as I thought I might have scored.
Okay.
It's all for a purpose and serving a very good cause. So thank you very much for undertaking that work. It's going to be really important to us. But in avoiding that ranking and using the colour coding, which we also use, I'm wondering what thought you gave to and what you implemented to actually place the guardrails around integrity of the assessment and how structures you put in place to be able to make that game system.
Yeah. Okay.
Toby, you got just one, not 1 minute, I think about 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
So, I mean, just you mentioned that it's not your role. You don't have the responsibility under legislation to monitor proactive disclosure, the websites, but the public authorities have the obligation to proactively disclose. So this is about, the Information Commission will maybe oversee it and look at all the obligations. So, and I think, this idea of repeated, you said you monitored how they done it. I mean, I think that, and Chris said, we're not going to do it this year, but maybe next year. I mean, the idea is that there would be subsequent assessments to see where you're going. Yeah, I mean, we appreciate very much the grant of support from the Canadian government, but it doesn't quite reach $3 million, even Canadian dollars, let alone euros, I guess, which are probably the currency you're talking about. So we're looking at something more modest than that, but we believe something useful can be done about that, done with that. And I mean, Elizabeth, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of that depends on, we have a solid methodology, which, incorporates certain guardrails. It's also the the integrity of the people who are applying it and overseeing it. And we hope that for the public authorities that are being assessed, they're not supposed to know until they do the self-assessment that they're being assessed, and you're going to find out. And if they don't like it and they don't want to cooperate, there's no forceful anything in the system. I mean, you may have powers like that in one or another jurisdiction, but that's not really our aim. Our aim is to, in good faith and in a decent and fair and proper way, to find out where the problems are and then try to address them. And if public authorities don't want to, okay, then they won't cooperate with you.
So thank you, Toby, Lucy, Chris, and everyone. I just want to say this is why I'm bad at moderation, because I wish we had like 1 hour, Toby, to go nitty-gritty into your methodology and critique every aspect of it, which you don't have the time to do. It's like killing me.
When you do the
And
training.
it's like killing me. Okay, thank you so much. All right, bye.
Thank you. Thank you.